Rev up your engines!
Scott Amp says, what's your opinion on Firestone repair centers? Are they reliable? All right. Those are chain stores. Now, originally, they sold a lot of tires, right? There's so much competition in that, and they went into fixing cars and doing stuff, right? The problem with most chains are they generally don't have that many good mechanics that actually work there. The manager makes all the money. The owner makes all the money, right? And oftentimes, they hire people off the street, and then they say they can do stuff that they really don't know how to do. For example, I knew a guy who ran a Firestone one when I was in Houston, right? And he said, yeah, bring car and we'll do an alignment. All right. He didn't have an alignment machine. As soon as the customer left, he drove it down the street to his friend who had an alignment machine, and that guy would charge him back in the day $50 for aligning it. Then he'd turn around and tell the customer $100, and he made money doing nothing. So I'm not a fan of these chain repair shops. I'm just not. There's too much corruption involved in them that they got to make money. They got to make money. So they just try to keep selling you stuff and selling you stuff. I'm not a fan. Not a fan. Haji says, what big company do you hate the most? Well, there's so many to choose from, you know? I do have to say, when it comes down to that, I would have to say insurance companies and lump them all in there. They take your premiums, they keep raising, and if you ever have to make a claim, they always have excuses of, well, that was an old fence, so it's completely depreciated. You get nothing for that. Your roof is too old. You get nothing for that. Oh, and by the way, it's storm damage, and if you read your little claim on the bottom, you'll realize that you've got a $20,000 deductible for storm damage. You know, I mean, those are probably, I got to say, I hate insurance companies. I always have, and I always will. You know, they take your money, but then when you want to collect, oh, no, that's not covered. Oh, I'm sorry. You got a big deductible on that one, baby. That's what I probably hate the most. And I got to say, they're all pretty much the same. I've dealt with different insurance companies in my life, and every single one of them screwed me over. The man gaming says, I got a Corvette Stingray. It won't turn off when I turn the key off. All right, 99% of the time, it's a bad ignition switch. The electronic part. When you turn the key off, that's the key assembly, and then it goes down to a rod that's supposed to make the switch go off, right? If it doesn't go off, it usually means the electrical portion has shorted out, and it will no longer go to the off position. It's always sending power. So try a new electrical ignition switch, the electrical part. That's what it is 99% of the time. The switch isn't shutting power off, and if it doesn't shut power off, it's all over. It'll keep having power. It'll keep running, right? Now, in an emergency, if you got to shut it off, a lot of times what you can do is see how low you can get it. I can drive the brake on, get it idle as low as you can, quick turn the key off, and a lot of times that's enough to shut it down. That if it's sitting idling in a park, it might idle higher and then not shut down. But the odds are you need a new ignition switch, the electrical portion. That boy says, I got a 2004 Honda Pilot. Makes noise on the right front when I brake. I replaced the pads, but it still makes the noise. Here's the thing. You replaced the brake pad. Did you replace the rotors? Now, if you didn't replace the rotors and you replaced the pads, the rotors will be shiny. The new pads will make a noise. And you did say, if I hard brake several times, it gets hot and the noise goes away. That makes total sense because you're heating up the rotor and the brake pads, and then they're not going to make the noise because that scrapes all the rust off the rotors. Obviously, it's stopping okay, right? And if it goes away after you do that heat thing, then if you don't like the noise, change the rotors. If it's just a little noise and you don't want to buy expensive rotors and do the brake job over, it's not really going to hurt anything, right? If it goes away once it's heated up, just look to make sure all the bolts are on tight, because if bolts are loose, it's going to make a noise. Double check the work that was done, but if the brake pads are all in there and all bolted up right, it's because you didn't change the rotors, and then they will often make noise. The new pads on old rotors will always make some kind of noise. Martin Bursk says, 2021 Toyota SR5, TPMS light stays on even after having all wheel sensors replaced. Okay, the tire pressure monitoring system, each wheel has a valve stem with batteries in it that send information about tire pressure to the computer in the car, right? Even though you had the sensors replaced. Well, numero uno, did you have a guy like me reset the system? You got to get the right sensors that fit with that system. You can't just go buy generic ones, right? Then you have to have a guy like me with our computers set it up to say this is left, this is right front, this is left rear, this is right rear, and tell the computer what's been done, and then the light should go off. Now, if it doesn't go off, that means your receiving unit somewhere has a problem too. We have machines that can check all that stuff. I have. It's very expensive equipment, costs thousands of dollars. You might just have a guy check it first. Tell him you want it reset first. He might reset it and that fixes the problem, right? But if he resets it and it still does, then either you got bad sensors that don't fit that car, car. And there are a million different types of sensors they use in cars. Toyota themselves use different kinds of sensors in different parts of their cars and different years. So you got to make sure it's right for your car, and then it has to be reprogrammed. Zachary says, I changed the track bar in my Jeep. Now the wheel's way out of alignment. Did you make sure it was bolted on correctly in the right place? Now, if it is way out of alignment, first thing, go to an alignment shop. See what they say. And they might say, well, that bar you put in is the wrong one for your vehicle, and it screwed everything up. I've seen it happen all the time. People buy stuff online from companies that come from China, and it's garbage that doesn't fit the car right. And then when you put it on, you got problems you didn't have in the first time. Normally, if you just replace one with the same exact part that it came with, and it's the right size, you're not going to have any problems, right? But if you went aftermarket, who knows? Who knows, you know? So you should start with a good alignment guy and explain, I changed this and now it's out of alignment. And he might say, well, it's the wrong size. Or, okay, well, let me adjust it and see what happens. Maybe it's only off a little bit so that he can make adjustments on the vehicle. Just realize modern vehicles don't have that many adjustments. When I was young, there were like 6 different adjustments. Now most only have 2. So if a part is really wrong, there's nothing they can do about it because they don't have all the different angle adjustments that they used to be able to do when cars were built better than they are today. Cloud 2 says, Scotty, I got a Chevy Malibu, 250,000 miles. Is it worth replacing the engine and tranny if I do it myself? Well, here's the thing. The Malibus aren't that good. You got 250,000 miles. What are you going to replace the engine and transmission with, right? You're probably going to go for some from a junkyard. Who knows if they're any good, right? Or let's say you're going to get rebuilt ones. They're only as good as the people that rebuild them. And I find that people generally do a really crappy job rebuilding Malibu engines and Malibu transmissions. You put a bunch of money buying the stuff, putting it in, and find out it either doesn't work right, or next year or the year after, it breaks again after you spent all that money. With 250 grand, rather than doing that, hey, I'd rather go out and buy some junky old Toyota that, you know, maybe it is 200,000 miles, but it's still running okay, rather than put thousands into buying stuff and putting it in, engine and tranny, rebuilt, or take pot luck with a junkyard one from a junkyard. I'd no way would I do that on something like that. It wouldn't be worth it. The car's worth nothing with 250,000 miles, you know? Now, here's a warning from Roy T. about his car being damaged in a car wash. I would have never even thought of this one because I don't go through car washes. They often scratch your paint, but listen to this. It's phenomenal. Like most people, I left my engine running when I went through an automatic car wash. Now, as I entered the massive soap waterfall section, my coolant temperature gauge quickly rose into the overheating. My AC started blowing hot air. Noises like AC refrigerant spewing out because it was overheating. My AC never worked properly until I had it fixed. I'm assuming the massive waterfall of soap got ingested into the condenser and radiator long enough to make it overheating. Since this incident, I no longer run my car when it's going through a car wash. I turn the AC off if I have to keep the car running, if it's one that you drive through but your car's driving, it's not pulled through. I learned my lesson. I hope you can help other people. Tell them, don't run your car when you're going through the car wash. Bubbles are going to block things, right? Anything that blocks your radiator and AC condenser is going to cause overheating. If you get a lot of bugs, like if you live where there's all kinds of bugs in the summer and you got your AC on, check it every once in a while. Clean those bugs off with a hose. Get them wet. Get a little soft brush and scrub them off after you get them wet and get them off, because that'll cause your car to overheat too. I never would have thought it would have gone that far, but in any case it did. Don't run it if you're going through a car wash. Who knows what's going to happen? I was reading a great article in the New Yorker, The Great Cash for Carbon Hustle. Long article, had a lot of information in it, but the gist of it is these clowns that are doing this carbon offsets. Well, we won't deforest this area. Well, we're not going to cut the trees down, so that's actually good. So we can sell us not cutting the trees down to companies who pollute and burn coal and stuff. I mean, the whole idea of it is patently absurd. There's a company called South Pole that sells these, and they had a big problem in Zimbabwe because they said, well, we're not going to cut the trees down here so we can do carbon offsets and load them horse manure, right? They find out that the guy that they're dealing with in Zimbabwe took 25% of the money as his commission to begin with, and that, hey, he was building all kinds of mansions and stuff, I guess. The guy himself even admitted he didn't know anything about forests. We're avoiding deforestation so we can sell that credit to something is patently absurd. And of course they say, well, this will help the local, give them jobs and stuff. Well, listen to what they had to say about that. The guy who runs this thing's name's Wenzel. Wenzel describes his indoor horse riding range in Hazari and his various business interests. We wonder how much of this money a corporation spend on credit credits make it to the people on the ground, and not just this rich dude himself. And if you think that side is bad, listen to what the writer says in this. Do you know what happens with the money? You should look at the carbon side of this project, not just the finance, to understand how dirty this situation is. Of course it is. It's just another scam, right? We'll keep the world safe by not cutting down forests and then letting other people burn coal and pollute all over the place, right? It's not countering anything. It'll keep the regular thing the way it is, the forest as it is, if it does. Who knows if that'll even happen, right? But even if it did, that's status quo. But then that allows these guys to keep continually burning coal, which is a negative thing. So, neutral thing, leave it as it is, plus a negative thing is negative. It's not positive. It's just a joke. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.